Bob McCarroll is the chairman of the committee, and why don't we just go around and introduce ourselves?
Lamar Cook, I'm the neighborhood representative for the CPC. Good evening, everyone.
And then we have Gloria. We have Gloria DiFilippo. Raise your hand, Gloria, so that when they see your name anyway. Gloria is the representative of the planning board. David Finn. David is the representative of the Springfield Historical Commission. Juanita Martinez. Juanita is the representative of the Conservation Commission. Terry Mitchell. Terry is a neighborhood representative. Terry Rodriguez. Terry Rodriguez is the park representative. Ralph Slate. Ralph is a neighborhood representative. Willie Thomas is the Housing Authority representative, and I am Bob McCarroll. I am the chair, and I am the representative of the Springfield Preservation Trust. So we have all 9 committee members present. Basically, we are starting the 2020 application process. We received 24 applications. They are spread across the city. We have applications from Brightwood, Memorial Square, East Springfield, Indian Orchard, 16 Acres, Forest Park, 6 Corners, McKnight, Metro Center, and several proposals that are citywide. So we are meeting with 10 of the 24 applications tonight to get a brief proposal. So applicants, you will have 5 minutes. David Finn will be timing you. David, at the 4-minute mark, you keep yourself unmuted and say 4 minutes, and maybe raise your hand and show 4. And at 5 minutes, you say time. The applicant should finish their sentence in a non-run-on compound sentence. And then there's an opportunity for the committee members to ask you questions until we don't have any more questions. So with that being said, the only other thing I would say is the comptroller's office has informed me that as of April 30th, we have taken in fiscal 20, $1.7 million. That includes also the state contribution, which was significantly higher than usual. And there's still 2 months more of revenue to come in. But we're figuring that we have about $1.7 million that we can award if we wish to City Council. We are only the recommending body. After we meet with all the applicants, we will deliberate and then send our recommendations to City Council, perhaps by early September. They then take as much time as they like. And then once they approve or don't approve, then we move to the stage where contracts are written. So it's basically a year's worth of process. So let's start. The first presentation is Reed Green Springfield Invasive Plant Program Phase 2. David?
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to the committee for having Reed Green Springfield present tonight. Doug Johnson should be on the call, one of our partners on our what we call the Invasive Plant Program for Springfield. This is our second time that we're applying for funding for the Community Preservation Act funds through the grant program, and we're excited to continue the work that we began in the initial round of funding. One of the interesting things about our project, it deals with living things. And one of the things that presents some opportunities, but it also presents some problems. And I'll get into those in a second. But one of the other things, it isn't exactly a sexy project where we can restore the Campanile, or we can put in new lighting somewhere, a historic fountain, or a memorial for veterans or something like that. It's something that people might not even notice, the issue of invasive plants. And what we live in a urban habitat here, and we have pressures placed on all of the green space in our urbanized areas, whether it be conservation lands, public parks, other open space, and private lands, as well as right-of-ways and trails, paths, and things like the Connecticut River Walkway Bikeway. And so the impacts and the pressures that are placed on those to grow and survive are many. And one of the threats to a sustainable landscape in these places is invasive plants. And what we've done, it's a huge problem in across the country, and in Springfield it's no different than anywhere else. Can you see any of my slides, or do I, Karen, do you know if I bring those up or we don't need to see them? I just put some PowerPoints together, but one of the neat things about it is we have in Springfield about 21,000 acres of land, and not counting our trails or pathways, we have about 62 acres of public lands that are have Japanese knotweed. And Japanese knotweed is one of the invasive plants that eventually we hope to control. But as we look, and we have an average of about, and we've done a little study on this with the Forest Service, the University of Massachusetts, and some of our partners at the Mass Department of Agriculture Resources, it looks like we have 8 stems per square foot, and the number of stems per acre is about 350,000, which means we have 21,600,000 stems of Japanese knotweed in Springfield. So we have an enormous amount of Japanese knotweed, which is one of the 4 major plants that we hope to control over the next 10 years. And so this funding that we're applying for now is to continue the process that we've begun in our first project, part of the project, which was a little bit delayed through, first of all, because of permitting issues that we had to go through with the state to get our right-of-way permit and a few other things. Oh yeah, there's a cool picture. So the Connecticut River Walkway Bikeway, I just took the, there you go. Can we go back one, Karen? There you go. I just took this the other day when I was down there, and you can see there's Japanese knotweed on the right side along, and on the right picture also, and it's just beginning to pop right now. And so we have several ways of controlling, but the main way that we're trying is to inject these plants because we don't want runoff into the river, and we have to work with the Conservation Commission to get make sure we're using the right materials, and we have all that worked out with the state, as well as we let everyone know what we've done between the Park Department and the Conservation Commission. But here's the areas we're going to focus on this year, and if we are secured with the new funding, we'll continue this project into the other parts of the city. I just put
David,
yeah.
David, not to interrupt, but you have about a minute left.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to tell you, this is a great partnership, and on the right side, we brought partners, your money. We've looked at this, and I think I've told Bob McCarroll and all of you from the beginning, we weren't looking for money to do a project. We're looking to partner with the CPA team and the Park Department and Conservation Commission to do something that really is going to improve the environmental quality of the city. And we've been able to bring in some other partners along with the, the University of Massachusetts, U.S. Forest Service, and MDAR, the state agency that's responsible for control of pests within the environment. So this looks a continuation of our partnership that we've built. This is my 4th time in front of you folks, and always a pleasure to be here and bring you the updates and all of our work done to date and plans for the future. And as I said, this spring, maybe we can get some of you out to see some of the work we're working on this trial area along the Riverfront Park. So I'll end right there, but again, it's a continuation of our partnership, and we expect to our funding to be just about used up when this funding will kick in. So that will give us basically a 3.5-year push to start on our control and bring those 62 acres down to somewhere around 30 by the end of next year.
Okay, David, time is up. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
So I'm now going to go down the list of committee members, and if they have questions, they'll ask it, and if not, they'll say pass. So Lamar?
Thanks for reapplying, David. I have no questions at this time. Pass.
Gloria?
No questions.
David?
Yes, David, can you talk just briefly about your progress to date? And I see that your application states that you're seeking multi-year funding, and I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on being able to stay ahead of this?
Yeah, we checked off last time multi-year funding just because we didn't know the process. We were brand new to it. And the reason we did that is in case we don't use up the funds during this next round, that we would have the opportunity to carry them over to the next fiscal year. But progress to date, we've done a lot. Most of our work is focused on Forest Park, Blunt Park, and we've done some in Van Horn Park, the last ones of the season. Is Doug Johnson on here? Doug was here a minute ago.
I'm on here.
Yeah, Doug was out doing some injections on the trees in Van Horn Park, along with, who are you out there with, Doug?
Liz Stevens.
Stevens,
There's also
October
applicator.
this year. So, but those are our areas, Dave, Finn, that we focused on. And then we're going to be expanding that into Glen Road, some additional work in Forest Park, and then the riverfront is our big push for this season. Now, keep in mind, I'll shut up in a second, but the thing is, we're trying to complement the work that is being done through your CPA funds to some of those more sexy projects where there's a building or a landscape that needs improvement. And we're coming in and, you know, working with you sort of as your arm and to go and control invasive plants on those sites. So if you're doing something, you know, I don't know where they are, but the riverfront and the McKnight Trail and those areas were earmarked, and we've been focusing on those because you've put money toward them. So that's why we're working on those.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Juanita, any questions? You have to unmute yourself, Juanita.
All right. I have just one question for you, Dave. The plants are starting to pop up now. I've seen them in Forest Park. Is
Yeah.
this the best time to inject them?
No, and that's one of the issues. Now, you know, it's
Dave, can I comment on that?
yeah, go ahead.
A lot of experience in the Adirondacks, and injections from about the last week in July through the end of September are extremely effective, but it's not effective to do the treatments right now.
So it's when the plant is more mature, is that it?
It's when the plant starts to flower is when it's taking nutrients down to the root system, to the rhizomes. And so you need to time the pesticide application to when will take the pesticide down to the root system.
And Juanita, that's what that study along the riverfront is doing. We're going to be some injecting every week for now till October to see exactly what the results are from injection at this time of the year and through the summer. So it's a trial, it's a scientific study. There's a dearth of information on studying control of the Japanese knotweed. You know, Doug has the anecdotal from his work out there, but he's done more work than most people in the whole country. So we have his expertise, and we know it works when we start in the end of August, September, and October. We're trying to see, can we get out there earlier? Because, and you know, we don't have time tonight, but I'd love to explain to you how the maintenance of some of these landscapes, like at the riverfront, the park department wants to come in and cut them. And what that does, it proliferates new growth. So we'll be working, and hopefully I can work with Pat Sullivan and with Tom Dougal, their director of maintenance, and try to come up with areas where they're not going to touch this year. We'll let them grow, and then our team can come in and do the injections.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Terry Mitchell, any question?
No questions, I pass.
Terry Rodriguez? Terry, you have to unmute yourself.
It's not cooperating. Okay, no questions.
Okay. Ralph, any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Bob, this is a question for you.
You've muted yourself, Ralph.
Myself, but somebody muted me. Okay. I have a question for Bob, and then I'm going to transition to the question to David. So there was something mentioned in the application about a education program, and there was something about printing. My question to Bob is that an allowable CPA expense to do an educational, kind of outreach to the community for a recreational proposal? Do you know the answer to that, Bob?
Well, I would think not. I think there are a lot of there are a bunch of proposals this year that have a component that's not eligible. And that's for us to ferret out as we go through the process.
Okay, so the question to David then is, I noticed that you had some money in there from external sources. A lot of it was in-kind labor, I think, but if you were to do outreach, do you have any other groups that would essentially be able to offset that outreach and printing and education of the public so that the CPA money could be spent just primarily on the irrigation?
Yes, I feel, well, I can't speak on behalf of Regreen Springfield itself because I don't control the budget, but our board would certainly probably vote to put the $1,400 that line item is out of our own pocket in toward that project. But then I could also plead or make a request to some of our partners there, and the two partners especially that I'm thinking of is the U.S. Forest Service and the University of Massachusetts that could do some of that for us. But I can also check out, we have a good relationship with the sheriff in the Hampden County House of Correction, and perhaps they would do some pro bono printing for us. They've done it in the past for other projects with Regreen Springfield. So that wouldn't, no, I don't have an issue with that. Or if there's anything else that you see itemized in here, you know, we'd be happy to work with you on how you would adjust the budget toward that. We just put in what we thought we would need, and that's why. But the informational outreach to the neighborhoods is some. Wait till you see the signs we're going to have this year down on the experiment on Riverfront Park. We still have to get permission from the Park Commission and Pat, but we're going to show a couple signs down there that people can read and see about invasive plants and make them more aware. And you know, we didn't think people would be recycling all their things and dragging the bin out for recycling every week, and now they do. So maybe they'll get a new awareness of how invasive plants are threatening a lot of our natural landscapes.
Willie, any questions from you? Willie, you're okay. You're fine. Okay. Willie, any questions?
No questions. Good presentation. Thank you.
So, David, my question is, well, briefly, your budget does contain things on large signs and small signs. What are they? Are they more or less educational signs?
Yeah, those are all educational signs, and I could send it, you know, if you need any samples, I could send those over to the committee. And we're getting some of those from what they've done in Great Britain, because it's a major problem there, but they've found by educating the public then can take care of these on their private properties. So there's twofold here, is just these invasive plants have affected Riverfront Park or the Connecticut River Walkway. And then the second signs would be, that would be some smaller, larger informational signs on controlling invasive plants, and it will send you over to the MDAR website, as well as the website that we're setting up for this whole control program. Keep in mind, we have some other funding toward this project at Regreen Springfield through some generous donors. So now we actually can make this project a little bit bigger in scope and really leverage each of the way we pull this together to really get a good product out. And we're not looking to do it this year only again. This is going to be a 5-10 year project before we really see the great progress that's happened in other places like Doug Johnson has done in the Adirondacks. And I'm not just saying that, but it's one of the few places that they've been actually able to control.
All right. Well, thank you, David. I do think, do send us by May 29th, either the text or a sample of what the sign are, the two different kinds of signs. That would be helpful.
Okay.
So I don't know, do any other committee members have questions? So David had a question before. Do you have another question? David Finn, any more questions?
I do not, Bob. Thank you.
Ralph, you had a question. Any more questions? No? Okay.
No, I don't.
So I have just one other one. In your thing, you talk about, I may be mispronouncing this, phragmites?
Phragmites, yes.
where are they? And they're part of this removal program as well. Where are they physically located?
Though in Forest Park and the in the Porter Lake area in the back as you head toward the upland areas. So it'd be on the east end of there. There's quite a bit in there, and then a few places in the park there, around the lake there. That was the target area. But we also find it some in Blunt Park and a few other places. They're usually near the either a transition from wetlands into uplands. But
there's also quite a bit on the McKnight Trail.
On the McKnight Trail. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be going, there's a whole process with the McKnight Trail, because part of it is owned by the church and the other is owned by Pan Am Railroad. So we're in the process now of trying to sort that out and see if we can get out there and do some work in October. But we've got a few months, toward, that'll be our last area we hit this year. But Bob, if in short answer your question, we have enough Japanese knotweed right now to keep us busy for at least 3.5 years.
And just one last thing, David, regarding the map that you showed regarding Riverfront Park.
Yes.
There's an issue with it that needs to be corrected.
Okay.
Because it's a problem of the GIS base map and the aerial photograph not being in sync.
Okay.
Aerial photograph insets are right on. They're the actual spots where you're working.
Yeah.
Your outlined areas and the arrows that are going to the outlined areas are actually showing up on the other side of the railroad tracks.
Railroad tracks. No, they're going to be on this.
I don't want anyone thinking that we're doing work on Luxburg or LA Fitness or the Hall of Fame property. So either correct that map or don't be distributing it.
Okay, well, yeah, sorry about that. We were updating that map for a presentation.
We don't have to go into it, David.
Okay.
We're going to move on. Just correct it, please.
Okay, I'm going to do that, and I'll get you the signs.
Yep. Very good. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank you all for your time, as always, and everything. And I have one question for the team here. I got to get you something by May 29th. Does anyone know what May 29th is?
It's the last Friday of the month.
John Kennedy's birthday.
Oh, okay.
It coincides with my brother's birthday, and the president wrote him a nice letter for his birthday, and we still have it framed, and it's a highlight of our Kennedy connection. So there you go. I'll shut up and have a great night, everybody.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So the next presentation will be the McKnight Historic Rehabilitation Program. That's Scott Hansen, I believe. Scott?
Unmute. Yes, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to present tonight on behalf of the city's Office of Planning and Economic Development. Our proposal, we are calling the Historic Home Restoration Program, and quite simply, it's meant to help owner-occupied owners in the McKnight neighborhood. We chose the McKnight neighborhood based on a couple of ideas. That one, we looked at code enforcement issues for properties in historic districts, and they had a significant number. It's also one of the city's oldest historic districts. So we decided with a program like this, we wanted to target one specific neighborhood, one specific local historic district, to try to get a success story out of that before we opened it up to larger area. The provisions of our proposal are, again, to support owner-occupied dwellings. We want to look at helping property owners to restore their historic windows and doors. As you know, the city's planning office serves as the staff for the Historical Commission, and we get so many requests for replacement of doors and windows. And the reality is, oftentimes, if you have somebody restore the existing original windows and doors, it can be at a lesser cost, and those fixes will last longer than new replacement windows. So we want to encourage people to think along those lines And we're hoping through this program that we can help them, you know, get it done in a more historically appropriate way. In addition to supporting the restoration of original historic windows and doors, we also want to, with this program, support the installation of high efficiency storm windows to go over and to protect those newly restored windows. And the third piece of this would be to support the exterior painting of these homes. We're looking at a maximum award to a homeowner of $30,000. We are requesting $200,000 in total, and we would also spend up to 10% of that $200,000 for historic preservation consultant, should we need one in assessing the particular needs of any property that comes in front of us. We also want to make sure that you know, all of these applications would come in front of the Historical Commission for their review before moving forward. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. So questions, we'll start once again. Lamar, any questions?
Question's actually for you, Bob. He mentioned the 10% will go to a consultant. Is that an allowable expense?
I believe it is, Lamar. I think because it's in a sense part of the project, overall delivery of the project expense.
Okay, thanks, Bob. No other questions.
All right, Gloria?
Yes, Scott, can a person apply twice for this? Once to do windows and then let's say painting? Or is it just $30,000 per home?
The way we see it, it would be, you can only apply once. You know,
Okay.
with such limited funding, we want to, you know, spread it out as much as possible.
And how are you foreseeing giving the money out? Is it after the project is done, halfway through? They have to give you 3 bids?
We have not sorted out the exact process. You know, we will have to look to see what the you know, the process is with the CPA and how they distribute funds. Likely there would have to be some upfront money for folks because that is a significant amount of money to outlay for a project.
Okay. Would you require people to get 3 bids the way the city does?
To the extent they can, yes. I think one of the challenges is going to be finding contractors that can do historic window and door restoration. So I think that may be one of the challenges of this program.
All right. Thank you. I'm done.
David, any questions?
Yeah, Scott, my question was similar to Gloria's in the way that how do you know, what kind of checks and balances are in place to evaluate an estimate and determine whether that's a fair assessment of a property's needs?
Well, that is one of the reasons that we would hire a preservation consultant to help us make sure that they did make sense. And it's also one of the reasons that we didn't want to have this program to fund construction projects. You know, painting estimates are fairly straightforward. You kind of know what the parameters are. You know, window restoration, I think, you know, we'll quickly learn, you know, what a typical cost is for a window replacement and be able to do that math. But we will be guided by a preservation consultant.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one question actually for you, Bob. This sounds, when we had problems with the law department with giving money to a group that would then give money to somebody else. Wasn't that a problem?
That's gonna be a problem here too. We'll be, I made a note to myself.
Okay, thank you.
But I think, let me say this, the last time it was, we were giving money to a non-governmental organization to give it out. In this case, it's a city department that's giving it.
You give it to a private person.
Well, yes. Yeah. Well,
What's the public purpose?
Well, the public purpose is that these are properties that are within local historic districts. And Chapter 40C, the overriding purpose of Chapter 40C is to protect and improve the historic district. We'll have that
Yeah,
conversation.
it's people's taxpayers' money,
Yeah.
though. You know, it's so.
Yeah.
I'll get an opinion for you on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on, Terry Mitchell. Any questions, Terry?
The question I was gonna ask, Lamar asked it, so I'm all set. I pass.
Okay, Terry Rodriguez.
No, the question that I was gonna ask, David asked.
Okay, Ralph.
Yes, I have a couple questions. Maybe I'll try to be brief. So, Scott, the first question I have is, did you consider doing sort of a cost sharing program where somebody would have to, match a certain amount of dollars for a project? So if they were going to paint their house and it was going to cost $15,000, they would have to put in a certain percentage of that so that you bring in more private money to such a program.
We would consider doing that. I mean, we purposely didn't lay out all of the rules, knowing that the CPA committee may want to have some of those provisions baked into the process, but we're certainly open to that. Our goal was pretty simple. We wanted to get a program out there that could be a success story and really make a visual impact in one of our most important historic districts.
And one last question too. Similar to how when we're giving taxpayer money to people for down payments on homes, we asked the Office of Housing to give us a list of the people who received the money just for transparency purposes. Would you be, willing to provide a list of who is receiving this money so that, we can be kind of assured that the money is being, not given out in a kind of a corrupt way?
Oh, absolutely. I assume this would all be public information. Yes.
Okay, Willie, any questions? Willie, you're muted.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. And I guess my question, Scott, is quite often when these old houses get painted, they don't get painted that frequently, there's carpentry work that has to be done because otherwise you're painting rotted or punky wood. So how are you expecting to handle the issue of when you're helping someone with a paint job and then you discover that, X number of clapboards or the column is not worth painting?
We did think about that, Bob, and I think there's a scale of repairs that you address. If it's that they have to replace the whole front porch railings in order to paint it, that would not be something that we would feel like would fall under this program. If they had some shingles or some clapboards that needed to be replaced as part of the process, and it was a small percentage of the overall cost, then we felt like that would be appropriate. And we'd be happy to work, with you to, come up with that percentage of repairs versus actual painting to make this work for the homeowner.
Okay. Thank you. So if any other commissioners have a question, raise your hand. Otherwise, we're done. Oh, Gloria has a question.
Yes. How do you know the viability of the individual applying for the money? Like, for instance, you first-time homeowner, you want to apply for an interest-free loan. They check your background. How about somebody applying for this, which isn't a loan? How do you know that person is going to be able to afford that house?
Well, I guess I'm not certain we're going to weigh in as to whether somebody can afford their own home. They do have to be an owner occupant. And, with the oversight of the city and the historical commission, we will have to, kind of weigh in as to, which projects, which applications make sense or not. And again, we can look at laying down additional guidelines to make sure that this is as transparent as possible.
Thank you.
Thank
Scott,
you.
just as a follow-up to sort of Gloria's, are you envisioning that this is sort of on an annual or a semi-annual application and then you vet and pick, or is it on a rolling cycle until first come, first serve and you run out of money?
I'm envisioning, I think what we're envisioning, that it would be until the funds have been exhausted. You know, again, we want to have a program that is a success story without layering too many complications on top of it. As we have found in other programs, it's oftentimes very difficult to get people to take free money, if you will, because of too many rules and regulations. So, you know, I think there's a balance point as to, you know, how many rules and regulations you want to put out there versus trying to make an impact in a really important historic neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Next presentation, Elias Brooking Apartments. So Peter, you're somewhere.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Peter Serafino, Director of Real Estate Development for Home City Developments, which is based at 261 Oak Grove Avenue in Springfield. And Home City is a 51-year-old not-for-profit organization that develops affordable housing. I believe I provided some images, some slides that show some of our accomplishments, as well as some other images of the property that I'm going to talk about in a minute. If those can be shown, that'd be great. If not, I can continue. So the funding requested for the CPC is for the redevelopment of the former Elias Brooking School, which is at 367 Hancock Street in Springfield. And the plan is to renovate it into 42 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom rental apartments. 35 apartments will be leased to households with incomes at or below 60% of area median income, and 7 workforce housing units will be rented to households at or below 80% of area median income. I believe that this project qualifies for CPA funds as both a historic preservation project and a community housing project. I understand that this request may need to be funded in more than one funding cycle, with some funds released after construction has started. And as you know, the building ceased operation as a city school after it was damaged by the June 2011 tornado. Home City Development bought the building from the city. Oh, there we go. There's some images. If you just scroll through, these show some of the work of the organization over the years. So our organization bought the property from the city of Springfield pursuant to a request for proposal process. We bought it in June 2018, and we've been working since then to design the redevelopment project and obtain the $19.4 million needed to complete the work. To date, the National Park Service has authorized federal historic tax credits that will yield over $2.9 million in equity funds for the project. And the Massachusetts Historical Commission has awarded $1 million in state historic tax credits to date. There'll be more state tax credits to come. In February 2020, Home City Development submitted an application to the Department of Housing and Community Development requesting the affordable housing resources needed to fund the project and commence construction. And the DHCD funding decisions are expected this summer, usually in July. The building itself was designed by Morris Maloney of Springfield, who was also the architect of Balliet, Dorman, and the Indian Orchard Elementary Schools. It was built in 1925 and is named for Elias Brookings, who was a native of Maine, a Civil War veteran, and a longtime principal of this nearby Central Street School, which no longer exists. Demand for high-quality rental housing remains strong in Springfield, and restoration of the school gym as a multi-purpose community resource center will enable Home City Development to offer a range of supportive on-site services to building residents and the surrounding community. The project has received strong support from the local neighborhood council. In a letter in favor of the redevelopment project, the Maple High Six Corners Neighborhood Council noted in its unanimous support and, I quote, because of Home City's excellent record in the neighborhood and throughout the city for rehabilitation and proper management of properties, we're confident that this project will be a valuable addition to our neighborhood. End quote. Springfield CPA funds are needed for this redevelopment effort. Despite minor structural damage from the tornado, the building is in fair condition. A temporary roof installed after the tornado needs to be replaced. Conversion of the school building into residential use presents many challenges, especially when retaining many historic features. Recreation of the original windows, restoration of the terrazzo corridor floors, restoration of the gym, and recreation of the decorative carved grotesques embedded in the corridor walls add considerable expense to the project. Addition of an elevator and on-site laundry, features for persons with physical and or sensory impairments make the property an attractive place to call home for a wide range of people. In addition, the building will be constructed to enable the installation of energy-generating rooftop solar panels either during construction or at a later date. An award of CPA funds followed by a DHCD funding award this summer will allow Home City Development to begin construction in late 2020. Construction is expected to take between 12 and 14 months, and with tenant, which will allow tenant occupancy as early as 2022.
Peter, just a quick note, your time is almost up.
The last two images there were a historic photo of the building in 1939 and the grotesques. So to wrap up, a favorable decision on this application by the committee members will add much needed rental housing and preserve a historic structure in the city of Springfield. And I thank you for your consideration of this request.
Thank you, Peter. So start Lamar, any questions?
Yes, my question is actually looking at the source of funds. When will you know, or when will you receive a decision on the funding you've applied for? There's a lot of outstanding funds that have been applied for.
Sure. The major source of funds for a lot of these rental housing, affordable housing projects comes from the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development. We submitted a full what they call the one-stop application back in February. And in the ordinary course of business, those decisions will be made in July. I have every reason to believe that those decisions will be made in a timely manner. So if we're fortunate to be awarded in July, like I said, we'll start construction at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Gloria?
Yes, what would be the breakdown of the $500,000? I did not see that in the proposal, and
Sure.
I may have missed it. So
No, you didn't miss it.
Okay.
It's really the overall cost of construction. I believe I have broken out a construction amount. I think the construction is around $12 million. So the number would be embedded in there. It's really a lot of the things I mentioned: restoration of the gym, the recreation of historic windows, the historic features that really add considerable expense to the project.
All right. And Bob, I have a question for you. This goes back to last funding with Mason Square. Do we need to have an idea of specifically where the money was used?
Well, what we clearly need to do is, if we're funding it as a housing project, we would need to have an affordability restriction on a certain number of units that we mutually agree on based on how much we're giving, just like all of the other agencies that are giving money. And secondly, we would want to have assurances that the exterior of the building is protected down the line, and that means either an exterior preservation restriction or becoming a local historic district. We don't necessarily need to know the specifics of what physical things are being fixed necessarily, but we can certainly say we want our money spent more on the outside than on the inside, or whatever.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay, David?
My questions have been answered. Thank you, Peter.
All right. Juanita?
My questions have also been answered by Gloria and by you. Thank you.
Terry Mitchell?
I pass.
Terry Rodriguez?
My question has already been answered.
Okay. Ralph?
Yes, I would like to say I am familiar with Home City Housing's work. When I was on the Historic Commission, they do fantastic work. The question that I have is, you're asking for $500,000, which is about 2.5% of your project. the way that I want to visualize it is, well, what happens if you know, what would happen if you didn't get that money? What would you not do with this project? Because I know that you've been successful in many other projects across the city without CPA funding. Why does this particular project need CPA funding?
Sure. We're making an extra effort here. I mean, we've done other historic preservation projects, as you've seen in the slides that we showed. There was the Tapley Court building on Bay Street, and the property we call Crosstown Corners, which is a multi-site property, all of which are historic. And in those cases, it was really preservation of the existing features, primarily exterior. Here, because we're reusing a school building that's never been used as housing, there's additional challenges. I mean, we're losing, so the need for additional sources of financial support is greater because we're losing floor area. We're retaining these large corridors, for instance, that, you know, if you were building new, that's not the way you build it. If it was built originally as residential, you wouldn't have as much, as they say, lost space, but unusable space that has to be heated and cooled and so forth. So I would say it's primarily the historic features, but the cost of producing rental housing in the state and throughout the country is quite high, and our request is reflective of the need of producing quality community housing and preserving the historic features. I don't know if that answered your question.
I think it did.
Willie, any questions? Willie, we can't hear you if you're saying anything. Now you've muted yourself again.
I'm having a little problem with my buttons here, but I'm catching on. It's a very good proposal. I think there's a definite need for this type of housing in that community that you're proposing to do. As a representative of the Springfield Housing Authority, we certainly like to partner with you if there's any way we can partner with you to provide this type of affordable housing. So good luck on your proposal.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, many of the rental vouchers for our properties typically come through the Springfield Housing Authority, so we do appreciate the relationship.
Thank you.
So the one thing that I do want to make clear for all proposals, even though we ask whether you might be multi-year projects, we don't make a commitment except for the year that we're in. So, you know, just so be aware that if we were to fund you this year, you have to reapply for next year. And there, obviously, we don't know what projects are coming in and what funding could be at that time. And I just want to make sure, Peter, that I read your pro forma correctly. You paid the city $215,000 for a vacant, tornado-damaged building whose rehab costs far exceeded its value, and the city has given you a measly $100,000 toward this project? Is that correct?
And we're happy for it. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
You are correct.
I wasn't misreading it. Okay.
That's the nature of this business.
Yeah.
Sometimes defies normal economics.
All right. So unless any other commissioners have questions, Ralph's raising his hand.
Yes, Bob, I do have one question. I know that certainly in the past two funding cycles, we've had a $250,000 cap on awards, and this proposal is for this request is for $500,000. And I know we've talked about multi-year, but is the thought here that this would be a $250,000 request for one cycle, or do we not have those rules?
Ralph, what our rules are, and we adopted them, it's not like they're imposed by CPA. What it says in our applications, it says large projects may reapply for funding in multiple funding rounds, but this should be identified as the intention during the first funding round. The CPA will not recommend more than $250,000 to any one project within a funding round. So that's the rule that we currently have.
Right. Okay.
All right. Any other questions? If not, well, thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
The next proposal is the Springfield Community Land Trust Revolving Loan Fund.
Hi, my name is Zeta Govan, and I'm the president of the Springfield Community Land Trust. And I have Pam Howland here with me, who is the author of this grant. And we are proposing to have a revolving loan fund for historic houses. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the big giant houses in Mulberry Street, where Dr. Seuss's area is. There are big houses there that are basically just not being lived in. They're too big for one person. So we're proposing to have this revolving loan fund to have people who have are not maybe able to maybe buy their houses on their own. Propose that we turn those big houses into kind of like three family condos, kind of, where they could own their own home in that space, and we'll fix them up and have them participate in that program so that we can have those houses lived in again after so many years. I know I'm making it very simplistic, so I'm gonna let Pam kind of give you more details. Go ahead, Pam.
Oh,
sorry.
It's okay. We were approached by the neighbors in the Mulberry Street area, and they were looking for solutions for the fact that these very large houses, some of them have 14 rooms, cannot be purchased even by a middle-income family and rehabbed because the rehab costs are too high. So they're often purchased by group home proposers, group home services. And we want to keep the area residential and be able to enable more home ownership to take place in that neighborhood. And we feel like if we had the administrative capacity to do this work, we would be able to get homeowners who would purchase, you know, a unit. It might be 2 units, it might be 3 units in the building, and we would know what the cost, how much the home buyer would be able to contribute to the rehab costs through their mortgage, and also how much the rehabilitation costs would be, and the preservation, especially of the exterior, the front of these houses they're just such beautiful examples of Springfield's residential history. And so if we can start a revolving loan fund that would be really, it would be a participation by the city, members of the city, as well as the first-time homebuyer training programs, nonprofit organizations, and we would be able to encourage contractors from Springfield to become more focused on historic restoration by really shepherding these houses through the whole process. So we're thinking that if we had $50,000 to pay a manager of the revolving loan fund, we could work with all the other partners that we want to have be invested in the project.
Pam, I don't mean to interrupt, but you've got about a minute left.
Oh, you know, I always do that.
No worries, no worries. I didn't want to cut you off mid-sentence.
Thank you though. At any rate, we're thinking in the first year, 2 years, we can do 3 to 4 homes with 2 buyers for each home or 3 buyers for each home. That's as far as I'll go.
Okay. Well, thank you. So now questions. So we start with Lamar.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we've crossed this bridge in the past, but I'm not sure how the funds will be distributed to a private organization. Maybe Ed can answer that question for us.
Yeah, that we'd have to have a plan that had a lot of particulars on that and the criteria, and we'd have to look not only at the eligibility criteria and the management aspects, but zoning aspects and other building permit conditions.
Okay. Gloria?
Yes, I do have questions. Noted in the budget that there is a recruit and hire director for 10,000. So those monies would not be allowed under CPA or administration. Is that correct, Bob?
Well, we'd have to look at that, Gloria. You know, when it comes to the category called support of housing, there is more latitude, but we've never used it, so I can't say that I have any experience interpreting it.
Okay. I guess instead of asking a lot of questions, I would just say that I have one major question on the implementation of the program. I would like to see some guidelines on how it would be implemented, so I would have a better understanding about how it's actually going to work.
You just muted yourself.
Excuse me.
Sorry, you just muted yourself.
There you go. I'm okay. How are you going to determine who's what house? I know you have a couple of houses in mind, but who the buyer is, and are there going to be multiple buyers for the house so that if it's a you're making it a 2-family, there's 2 buyers, and are they going to be assessed for their loan availability? I'd just like lots of those questions that I don't want to make into one at this hearing.
Sure. A lot of the focus of the development of the program is to pull together the partner agencies who would be having some say in what the selection process is going to be. For example, we would be working with wayfinders, the neighborhood housing services, and others to identify home buyers who would, want to purchase part of, of a larger house. We would also be working with the city, the planning department. I hope, if we can get funded, they would be very much involved in the administration of this revolving loan fund. I think that we have to have a lot of criteria drawn up that is going to take a very competent administrator to pull together. So we have to do it with a lot of participation from partner organizations. We also we're looking at the equity trust as a financial entity that could distribute the money and do it in such a way that it meets all the regular banking criterions and procedures, so that we would have those protections in place for everybody. The city.
Yeah, because so the proposed home buyers will have to go through a bank to get a regular kind of like a mortgage, to qualify. So they would have to qualify to be able to participate in the program. And our partners will help us identify those people.
Okay.
And the other thing we're talking about is having the eligibility reach all the way up to the median income level. Not 80%, not 60%, but all the way up to 100% of median.
Okay.
We know that this amount of money has a limited, you know, ability to fix some of these houses that need some very serious structural repairs to front porches, to roofs. And so we're going to have home buyers who can afford to, you know, purchase the unit with all of the other sources of funds that we can get to put into it, so that we finish the job before the homeowner moves into it.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome. David, any questions?
I do. Aside from Attorney Procula's concerns about the legality of this, I'm curious to know, you know, who determines the general contractor? You know, what role do you play in this, Zaida and Pam? And how do we determine how that money is distributed?
So, go ahead, Pam.
Okay. Well, our biggest focus is on recruiting and hiring a competent administrator who has real estate development experience and financing experience, so that we're looking for someone who has worked in the field. You know, right now we really don't have any staff capacity at all at the land trust, and so we would be, you know, focused on that piece of it before anything else.
So the Springfield Community Land Trust, I'm the president of the land trust. Pam is the clerk, and what we're trying to do is our goal is to have more permanent affordable housing in the city of Springfield. So we love Mr. I think Douglas's idea of converting the school into apartments. That's awesome. And that's what we want to see more of. So that's just our role. We're looking for, like Pam said, an administrator for it who's going to be well qualified and able to administer a program like this.
Thank you, Zaida.
Thank you.
Juanita?
Yeah, first of all, Zaida and Pam, this is a wonderful project, a great way of saving those big houses. But again, I'm just piggybacking on what other people said, that there's a lot of legal questions that have to be answered, and then we can move forward. But
and we're aware of that. In the land trust, we're trying to be very innovative. So I always tell Pam, and she probably I make her crazy maybe, but I always say, you know, we need to try everything we can try, you know, to get more of what we need in the city.
Okay, Terry Mitchell.
Gloria, you have asked the question already, so I'm gonna pass.
Okay, Terry Rodriguez.
Yeah, I just thought, did I hear you say you were gonna sell them as condo units?
No, I said that's like a condo, like, you know, when you have a building in different kind of apartments. So it would be those big houses at on Mulberry Street, and right off of Mulberry Street, Ridgewood Terrace. They have like 20 rooms inside of them, so you could realistically make 3 houses out of them, but they're all inside the same house.
Oh, okay. All right, that was my question.
Thank you.
Ralph? Ralph, you have a question?
Okay, sorry, I was muted there. I have a couple of questions. First question I have is, I want to just follow up on Terry Rodriguez's question. If this is, you're saying that these are going to be owner occupied, but if it's not a condo, then how is it going to be owner occupied? And when you say three units and each are owned, I mean, that sounds like a condo to me.
You know, really, Ralph, it could be a cooperative, a formal cooperative ownership, or it could be a condominium, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem with the condo. I was just I was assuming it was going to be a condo. I know that in Forest Park we have a condo that is, it's a larger house that was split up into 3 or 4 units, I think. And so I don't think there's anything objectionable to that. I was just curious. But my main question is, and I do like the idea of developing organizations, or helping the CPC helping to develop organizations that will renovate properties in Springfield, because I think that we have really a dearth of that type of organization. There are only a couple of them, and they're barely functioning because the people have sort of gotten, a little bit older, and they're not really doing it anymore. They've been doing it for so many years. But the question that I have centers on, and I understand your need to attract somebody who is qualified to run such an organization, but my question is there a way that this could be done at a much lower scale? Because my main concern is that the director's salary, which I think is listed at either $100,000 or $150,000, is a substantial portion of the amount of money that would be spent to actually do the work on the properties. And it doesn't really allow us to say, well, we'd like to do a trial for one house, because you wouldn't want to pay somebody $100,000 to manage a program to fix up just one house.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Zaida.
I was just gonna say, I think that 150,000, it's a 3-year thing, so it would be $50,000 a year, I believe, if I read it right. And what we're hoping to do is, like Pam said, once we get the loan, a revolving loan fund going, people will be paying back the loan. So we'll be continuing to have a sustainable amount of money to keep the program going, hopefully, for years to come, until we get all those houses renovated, and every other house in Springfield too. I have a big goal.
Every other house.
Okay, Willie?
Well, I just wanted to follow up. But I guess, so the question is there a way that this could be done on a smaller scale, so that we could, without outlaying, a full $250,000, to give it a smaller amount of money to do it on a trial basis to see if it works, rather than sort of gamble the whole $250,000 right up front?
Yeah, 100,000 is going to go into the properties themselves right up front, and then another 50,000 is going to go toward the pre-development costs. We've got to work through the zoning variances or zoning allowance that that's going to convert this single family into a 2 or 3 family. And I'm not sure how much those costs are going to be, but we decided that 50,000 would be a start, of 3 months of what have we got? 6 months for the director of the revolving loan fund, and then all of the rest of the money would go into the actual repairs and pre-development costs of getting the permits and those things that you have to have in order to get a mortgage sometimes.
Okay.
Right. Lily, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. And I guess my question is if I read the summary correctly, you want to both purchase and fix and then sell to owner-occupants properties, and help people buy properties. And when I look at some of the properties that you mentioned that you would like to get your hands on, my thought is 150,000 would probably just cover some of the repairs of these properties. So I guess the issue is, what are you thinking of our other funding sources to augment that, so you can at least get property number 1 done? Because I don't think what you've asked for is even enough to get property number 1 done without having other sources.
No, I totally agree. It's not. There are families who, because they're at the median income level, will be able to afford a higher mortgage than our traditional affordable housing, that, buyers would be. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there are other sources. I used to run a program called Self-Help Housing, and there is a value on sweat equity that can be put toward doing work on the interior of the houses. It doesn't all have to be done by, a contractor's crew, that there is some value that even a regular bank will accept as a, contribution toward the equity that they would have in the house. So that's the job of this revolving loan fund director, is to put all of those pieces of the puzzle together. And we would be recruiting home buyers, like I said, from from the first-time homebuyer programs, but also through regular realtors. We would start that process in the beginning, and we would have buyers identified, I think, very early on in the process.
And the buyers will hopefully have some resources to put in too, as well as the sweat equity. And, so because you have to have some skin in the game, you know what I mean? You have to be able to participate and to put your piece into it.
Okay. Any questions from any other committee members? Raise your hand if so. No? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
The next presentation is the George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum exterior preservation. So Kay, are you speaking on behalf of the museums, or are you Bernie?
I am. I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bob. And yes, I'm Kay Simpson from the Springfield Museums, and thank you so much for having this meeting tonight so I could talk a little bit more about the project that we are proposing. So as the title suggests, we're really focusing on the final stages of the preservation of the George Walter Vincent Smith Art Museum, which is on the Quadrangle in downtown Springfield. So there are a number of different aspects to the project. The first part that I'll talk about is the restoration of the remaining stained glass windows on the first and second floor of the museum. And these are the windows. There are actually 8 sets of large arch-topped stained glass windows. You're looking at them, or some of them now, that are in this 1923 edition. So unfortunately, there was a restoration of these windows in the 1970s, which was quite inadequate. And as part of that restoration, they installed some aluminum ventilators across the bottoms of the sets of windows, so they could actually make them open. You could open them to get air into the building. We don't need that element to be part of the windows anymore because we have climate modification in the building, and of course we want to restore them to their original state. So we will do that. Many of the windows are incomplete. There is some interior trim missing. There's incorrect repair glass. The windows were re-leaded during that unfortunate 1970s restoration, which I just mentioned. So the lead was mismatched and inappropriate for the windows. We also have to reglaze the windows. As you can see, the plexiglass has become deteriorated and yellowed. It almost now obscures the windows. And so all of this, in terms of the restoration that took place in the 1970s, has to be reversed, and we will seek to do that with this restoration. We are also looking to restore. Now we are looking at the main entryway to the museum building, and you can see the wrought iron sconces. Those are original to the building, the 1896 building. They were made by the Empire Metalwork Company in New York, and the restoration would be carried out by Grand Light Company. So they will replicate and replace all the missing canes of the sconces. They will clean the glass panes and repair any other damage. And then the sconces will also be rewired. And just to mention, so it's Grand Light Company that would do this work. The stained glass window restoration would be carried out by Guarducci Stained Glass Studios. They did the restoration of all the Tiffany stained glass windows in the original 1896 building. And finally, we would be repairing the stairs that are part of this entryway, and that work would be carried out by the Cinexo company. There has been significant water infiltration, and it's created damage that needs to be remediated through epoxy injections and remortaring. And the sconces on either side of the doors will complement the restoration of the doors themselves, which is a major project, but the doors will have to be taken off the building, totally taken apart, and then repaired. And we will, of course, retain all the original hardware as part of that restoration. So all of this work is going to be the final phase of a decade-long initiative to secure the exterior envelope of the building. The work that we've done has included the replacement of the roof and the retrofitting of all the skylights on the roof. And we have also, as I said earlier, repaired and restored all the stained glass windows in the building. And it's a very significant building. I think all of you know that this building is Springfield's first museum. As I said earlier, it was constructed in 1896. It's one of the oldest art museums in the US, and it is very similar to the Isabella Stewart Gardner in Boston, where you have a museum that was designed and built for a collection, which is still in existence and on display in the building itself.
Just a reminder, your time is almost up.
Well, I think I'm pretty much finished with that summation of the proposed project.
Okay, thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
So we'll go for questions. Lamar, any questions?
Thank you, Kay. I have no questions at this time.
Gloria?
I have no questions. Thank you.
David?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Juanita?
I just have one question. First of all, it's a great project. But have you, the other sources that you talked about, have you already secured those, all that money?
We have. There is funding from a number of different foundations.
Yeah, I saw the list. I was just wondering if you have secured them already.
We have secured many of them, and we are going to be seeking other additional funding as well.
Okay, thank you.
Terry Mitchell?
I pass. I have no questions.
Okay. Terry Rodriguez?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Ralph?
So I have a question. Can you help me understand the work that has already been done? I know that you're talking about 8 sets of windows here, but are these the ones that are on the second floor, on the front facade, or, you know, what percentage?
They're on the first and second floor of the 1923 addition. So in the original building, which is the 1896 building, all of the Tiffany stained glass windows on the first and second floors have been restored.
And just for commissioners, the addition is the part of the museum that is closer to the Science Museum. So the older building is closer to the library, addition's closer to science.
Exactly. So the 1923 addition is on the north side of the building. And that was designed by E.C. Gardner. The original building was designed by New York City architects Renwick, Aspinwall, and Renwick. And Walter T. Owen, who was native to Springfield, was part of that design team.
Okay. Ralph, you all set now?
Yes.
Okay. Willie, any questions? Willie? No.
Hold on.
No-
He's
no
coming back
question?
into the waiting room.
Oh, no questions. Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. And I guess I just have one question, Kay, just to make sure you realize that if we give CPA money, we're going to be looking for either an exterior preservation restriction or for the building to be subject to the controls of the Quadrangle Mattoon Street Local Historic District.
Yes.
Okay, and that either one of those is acceptable.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Yep. Very good. So now we'll go on to the next presentation, which is Kilroy House exterior restoration, also by the Springfield Museum. So Kay, it's yours again.
No,
No, I'm going to take
Bernie
this
is-
one.
Yeah, Bernie
Oh,
Spirito.
okay. Sorry, Bernie.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Bernie Spirito with the Springfield Museums. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, so I'll try and do my best to explain this project to you based on my little experience in this. I'm working with most of the notes that are from our development department. So I'll provide a little bit of a background on the Kilroy House and then the goal of the project and a little bit more about the project after that. So the Kilroy House was built in 1905 by Dr. Philip Kilroy, and it's on the former site of George Merriam's house. The house is an early and rare surviving example of mission revival architecture, which is a specific type of Spanish revival architecture. The house has been purchased by the Springfield Museums in 1981. And over the years, it has developed, it has gotten older and it has sustained water damage from old tiles and a poor gutter system. So the goal of this project is to fully seal the building envelope using sustainable, long-lasting materials to ensure the integrity of the structure for many years to come. The mission revival style of architecture is very rare in the Northeast, and we feel it's culturally significant for Springfield's history. The total project has a budget of $428,000 in 2 phases. We're looking for a request of $92,755 for phase 1. Phase 1 is to repair the roof section. We're going to work from the top down, and the repairing of the roof is going to be by Mahan Slate Roofing Company. And we're going to be replacing roof tiles and copper flashing. We have 42 tiles that need to be replaced. There are also 2 porch roofs that need to be completely replaced, and a repair and replacing of downspouts as well. So the roof work needs to be, the roof is part of this project, and then there is some pre-stucco work that needs to be completed. That's in part of this phase. And that involves detailed work to clean the slate for installation of full EIFS stucco systems, it's going to be removing all loose stucco, securing the exposed brick, patching exposed areas to match existing stucco, precasting and adhering to stucco components. There's the EIFS stucco is going to be 2 inches thick with an R value of 8 to the building. It'll have a warranty of 12 years and it is estimated to last 50 to 60 years. The Kilroy House has wide overhanging eaves, and that'll help further protect the stucco from weather when all the gutter and roofing systems are fully operational. So the company that will be doing the phase 1 of the stucco work and the prep work is Building MRI LLC. So I think that explains what needs to be done, and I guess I could take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Lamar, any questions?
Yeah, my question is just how was the company selected to source the work?
We have an in-house carpenter who has worked with, it's a specialty type of a thing, and he knew of this company's reputation, and we got him in to give us a quote. We can do some further work on that as well.
Thank you. So this was the only quote you received?
At this point in time, yes.
Okay.
He also provided a quote a couple of years ago when we were looking into it.
Gloria?
No questions.
David?
Yeah, my question had to do similar to Lamar's in terms of Bernie, the number of quotes you got.
Yeah.
Particularly regarding the roof repair. And I know Mahan's work, I do, but just wondering how you selected them.
Again, that was, we were looking at, we've done work with Mahan in the past. We're very comfortable working with them. They provided the work around the Dr. Seuss building, around the perimeter. We had a lot of work done with the slate there. We feel very comfortable with them.
All right, thank you.
Terry Mitchell?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Terry Rodriguez?
No question.
All right. Ralph?
No, I have no question.
Willie?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess then I have two, one of which is, you know, I'm not a financial person, so I don't read budgets well, but when I look at what you have in the application on page 7, it says that there's going to be $9,275 coming from the museums fund. And so I guess my question is that for phase 1, or is that for the total phase 1 and phase 2?
I think what this is a contingency on this particular phase is what they put in there.
Okay, so you may use it if you need it?
Correct.
Okay, and the only other thing is do you know that, you know, anytime we give money to a historic building, it has to meet the Secretary of the Interior's standards. And the repair work on the roof is probably easier. The gutter, I want to make sure that you're comfortable and you know already that phase 2 meets the Secretary standards, because I would hate to get through phase 1 only to find out that the technique you've chosen for phase 2 isn't acceptable.
Well, I'd have to ask more, but I don't know much about what the type of stucco is or the 2 different types of systems. I guess you can replace it with the similar type of stucco that's on the building now, or then there's some newer material, this EIFS system of stucco. I guess I'd have to further research to answer that question for you.
Yeah, and just, I mean, I'm looking down the road, but what I don't want to do is for you and for us to help with phase 1, and then you go to do phase 2, and we find that it doesn't meet the Secretary standards. Because the way I interpreted it, it's almost like something that you apply over the existing stucco. And if that's the case, it's adding thickness to the building, and I would tend to think that that might have problems. I'm not an expert when it comes to the Secretary of the Interior Standards. So I'm just saying, you know, make sure you've looked into it before you go down that path.
That sounds like a sound decision. Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that.
Any other questions from the committee? Juanita's got a question.
Yeah, this is just a quick question, but are the tiles on the roof, are those the original tiles?
Let's see.
They are, Bernie.
They are,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Okay.
Amazing. And there's only 45 of them that have to be replaced.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, those are, can you hear me? I'm sorry to interrupt, but those are the original tiles.
Are they ceramic or are they metal?
They're ceramic, they're terracotta.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a note here that says ceramic tiles last over 75 years.
Well, this is well over that, yeah.
So,
This wasn't it
durable.
built in 1905?
yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add one other thing to Bernie's presentation? In terms of the stucco, Bob, I think you know in the past we've brought in Steve Jablonski, and he served as an advisor on a lot of the restoration we've done on our buildings, and that is what we would do for phase 2.
Yep, that would be good. Okay. All right, thank you so much. So
right, thank you.
The next presentation is the Spanish-American War Memorial.
Speak loudly so they can hear you. Yes. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Pat Sullivan, Laura Walsh, and Pete Kupczak. Remember us from last year. So on this first one, the Spanish-American War Monument, it dates back to 1906. And the reason why we are coming before you, this particular monument has what is known as bronze disease. A lot of people think the patina is good on a monument, and in this case, it is not. It's a very corrosive process occurring when the chlorides come in contact with the bronze or other copper-bearing alloys. We have the same issue with the bronze monuments in Court Square and also at Merritt Park with the Puritan statue, and we have cleaned those. So this is one of the last of the downtown monuments that we want to ensure that we can preserve and stop basically the erosion of the bronze. And we feel if it's not done within the next few years, we're starting to, especially on the top of the head of the monument, we're going to start losing the pieces, and it will be that much more expensive to restore or replicate. And that's basically all. I think everything else was pretty thorough in the application.
Okay. So we'll start with questions. Lamar?
Thank you. I have no questions at this time.
All right. Gloria?
No questions.
David?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Juanita?
I do have some questions on the budget. I think I would be more comfortable with a more detailed budget.
Like that will happen once we, in the first phase, when we get the complete study done. It's hard until we have the restore company actually do his due diligence or her due diligence to review it and tell us exactly how much restoration work will be required. We don't know how thin some of that bronze is at this point.
So you haven't done a study of it yet? You haven't done a feasibility study or anything?
So we have some good practice from just over the last 12 years of getting these monuments done. So we feel we've got a pretty good budget before you.
Okay.
But everything would go mainly into the monument first, and whatever is remaining, we would like more of an historic landscape around the monument. When they did that road over, they didn't take our input on the planting materials and so forth. So we would like to improve just the whole landscaping of it. And if possible, we're working with Eversource as a donation of probably some uplighting on the monument at night.
So what you were talking before, the acrylic coating on it?
Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about? That won't hurt the bronze?
No, you want that on the bronze, and then you should be waxing them every 5 to 8 years. You really don't want green patina on a bronze monument. It actually eats away at the metal.
So I just an aside, this afternoon, when I was reading this, I Googled the artist. It was quite an interesting man. And anybody else who has a few minutes, you should Google him. He's born and raised in Chicopee and has done Civil War monuments all over the state of Massachusetts. It's an interesting man.
Yep. So we've got some beautiful bronze monuments for us.
Yeah, he's an interesting man. Anyway, thank you.
Terry Mitchell,
No questions.
Terry Rodriguez,
No questions.
Ralph,
I have a couple questions. The first question is this considered to be parkland, or who owns this actual plot of land?
All monuments come under the control of the Springfield Park Commission. So I believe this one though happens to be actually in a right of way, but the control of all these monuments come under the control of the Park Commission. That's why we've applied for the restoration.
Okay, and the second question I have is, I mean, a lot of the expenses of this are, quite frankly, they're tied to the restoration of the bricks and the plantings and benches. First thing is, looking at the overhead view, there's not a crosswalk to get to this monument. So does it make any sense whatsoever to set this up as a place for people to sit, especially when it's in such a busy intersection? I mean, I think I would really even feel safe sitting in the middle of that intersection on a bench. So I see the wisdom of fixing up the monument, but I don't really see the wisdom of, the other 2/3 of the expenses, which seem to be improving this plan. It seems like it's more neighborhood beautification.
Well, I think we would like people to be able to get to the monument, so that's why we, I think that's part of the beauty of being able to visit it and know what it's about. So that's why we felt that it should be restored back to its original condition around that area. So we would work with DPW on that.
Did it originally have benches?
I believe back in its day, there probably were some type of a granite bench or so forth in that area. We will study that further. But historically, there were, around anytime there was these monuments.
okay. Willie, any questions?
I share Ralph's concerns. I'd like to get a response at some point in regards to it being an area for people to actually have benches and sit in that particular location. I remember going through that area as a kid, about 5 or 6 years old, and I've always looked at that monument and that statue with a lot of with admiration. I'm glad to see that's being restored.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess my question is similar. It goes to the budget item on the sign. So it would be helpful to know what that is. Not that you're going to write down every single word that's going to be on it, but is it what is it and what's it going to look like?
I think we've got a good practice going where 2 to 3 members of the CPA committee join us as part of the process. So I think you should feel comfortable that we want you at the table with us as we're going through that process. And we would actually be turning, you, Bob, have been so helpful with the riverfront signage alone. We would continue to use all of your talents. So I would say some of the funding can be contingent upon future approval or involvement of the key CPA committee members as we move forward. We welcome that. And it's been very helpful having you at the table.
All right. Any follow-up questions from any members? No? Okay. We will then move on to Duggan Park.
Yeah, so on the development of Duggan Park, this area has really been underutilized in my 32 years with the city of Springfield, and we're so happy that the administration and just the park commission alone want to finally see this turned into a proper park. It's been under the control of the school department, and they just don't have the resources or the ability to apply for the grants that would be necessary to improve this into formal parkland. And also this would protect this as open space for future generations by formally turning it into a park. So what we would like to do is rebuild the athletic field with the proper track, bleachers, restroom, concessions, basketball court, and fitness. It's really a 2 to 3 phase project. So we are requesting assistance from the CPA committee for phase 1. This is a unique request in that we are requesting $1 million to be paid out over a 4-year period. And we have a $250,000 commitment from the NFL, $250,000 from the city of Springfield, $250,000 from Community Development Block Grant, and we just applied, and we feel confident about a land and water conservation fund grant for $750,000. So your match of $1 million with these other granting agencies would secure phase 1 of this project.
All right, Lamar, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Gloria?
Yes, I'm looking at the project and I'm overwhelmed with it. I think definitely it's an underutilized area of the city. Why a concession stand? What am I missing?
Well, you've got the middle school there. You're gonna have a lot of sports teams that would use it. It could help. We're feeling that we would do an agreement like we've done with the John O'Sullivan League, Stone Soul at one park, where they actually run the concession, and then the money they make helps support the youth activities. And we've had success when we team up with and we put it out for a bid for youth purposes, and it's worked out well.
All right, and help me understand, what is being done exactly in phase 1? Is that just preparing the land?
No, you would have a finished field to be used with a track. It probably wouldn't get us the bleachers or the concession stand, but we would have the infrastructure in place to go into phase 2. And we would be looking for other foundation grants out there for the phase 2 as well.
Okay, and the finished field would be for track? Basketball?
Yep.
Okay.
Basketball, and it would be a multi-use soccer, football, lacrosse field.
How about baseball?
Baseball is over to the far left of your plan. I guess it would be the south side of the field.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
David?
I'm good, Bob. Thank you.
Okay, Juanita?
Again, like Gloria, it is overwhelming. And I was just wondering, is there any way of breaking down a piece of phase 1 for us? So for example, maybe the outdoor classroom, the community garden, but to break, rather than just being part of a lump sum of money, because it is a large amount of money. If we had one thing that we could.
I need $1 million.
$1 million.
I need $1 million. It's that simple.
But for this cycle, you're talking 250,000.
Well, I'm looking for, I guess, when I worked with Bob, when this whole idea of CPA was going forward, there's an ability to borrow or a bond. So I'm looking for your capability to basically bond, and we'd have to have a meeting with the law department and finance on that, because I've talked to finance, they're open to this. And so we're looking to decide how best to do that. So I don't know if you want to do it over a 20-year period. We wrote it in as making a 4-year commitment for the $1 million.
Yeah, well, I guess it might be helpful. So just to clarify, CPA can be used to pay municipal bonds. So if indeed they were to build this and they took a $2 million bond to build it, and it was over a 20-year period, whatever that payback comes at, we could indeed vote that CPA is on the hook for that every year. So if it's $100,000 to pay back the bond, but so it would be helpful to know what the cost of a bond would be.
Yeah, well, Eddie and I will work on that with finance.
Because I'm not even sure whether we can commit, short of a bonding issue, I don't know whether the committee can vote to commit future committees over 4 years that this much is coming right out of the top.
You have to say subject to appropriation.
Appropriation meaning the state gives us the money and the money comes in from the tax levy.
No, our budgeting process. Yeah.
And
Right.
city council approving our budget. Okay, so moving on, Terry Mitchell. You're muted, Terry.
I have no question.
Okay, Terry Rodriguez.
No question at this time.
Okay, Ralph.
Yes, I'm hoping you can make me a little bit more comfortable here. So the way that I'm sort of looking at the project is this is a school building, and it seems to me as though a large part of the use of this may be devoted to the school. So you could argue that the CPA is really funding a school project in this case, couldn't you? I mean, there's the track field, like, for example,
the grant that we've applied for requires the land to be transferred over as parkland for park purposes only. And we would be the ones now scheduling it for any games and so forth. So as any of our schools, like say Forest Park Middle School uses Forest Park every day. The school department uses the Echo Center every day in Forest Park. So it would be the same relationship that we have now of all our parks that are adjacent to school property. For example, Kennefic Park is across from Chesta and the new Brightwood Lincoln. They will be using Kennefic Park during the school day, and we welcome that. It's open space land. It's meant for youth. And but we would have full control, meaning the park commission would have full control over that land on the school committee.
So let me ask a hypothetical. Let's just say that, like, let's say maybe around 10 a.m., I'd like to go play basketball on the basketball court. Would I be allowed to do that as a citizen of the city? Or would somebody say, well, hang on a second. Would somebody say, well, the school is in session and you're not really allowed to be on that area because there are school children in the area?
Nope, it's similar to DeBerry Park. That happens now. So we have fences around that allows the public to go into DeBerry Park during school hours or play basketball, what have you, and that does happen.
Okay. Ralph,
So I guess my last question is regarding the track. The track seems very specific to a school function because I'm not really aware of people. I know that certain people will often walk on tracks, like Long Meadow High or whatever, or even probably, other ones that are in Springfield, but it seems like that's awfully specific feature for a school's track team. It's not something that, communities don't just build tracks for their residents, they build them for their students.
Well, we've got a request to put a rubberized track in over at Blunt Park from the Bay Neighborhood Council. We're working with them now, and now it's probably gonna be next year's CPA application. East Forest Park, where I live, we are walking on the new Pope Francis track. My wife and I used to ride over to Springfield College track. So as we age, we need that comfort of that type of a track. I know I need it with my back. So I look for that as a resource in our community to be able to walk on that type of a surface. We just did a field over the Scavina, Beauregard Scavina Park, where it's not a track per se, but we put a asphalt walking surface around that field because that's what the neighborhood wanted, that type of a surface to walk on. People don't want to walk on stone dust in school, So, well, yeah, and that's right. And good point. That's another park, right? That was school land that's now been converted over to parkland at Mary Lynch.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Willie? Any questions, Willie?
Good answers. Good answers. No questions.
Okay. So I mean, Ralph asked the questions that I had, but the question I have for you, Pat, is if we were to do a multi-year commitment somehow, are you prepared for the fact that in our mind next year we've already given you $250, so as projects that are recreation come in, we're gonna take that into
Oh,
consideration.
absolutely. Yeah, this is a high priority for the park department. We'd like to acquire more park land. And it's a good thing for our city to get this as parkland and to make these repairs final.
Okay, any other questions? Raise your hand.
Yes,
Terry?
I have one-
Oh, well, let's go to Willie because I can't see him.
Okay.
Willie, you had a question?
Nice muted.
Now you're muted. Okay.
No question. No questions.
Oh, no question. All right, Terry, did you have a question? Terry Rodriguez?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Ralph. A lot of people are looking to do a lot of walking with their kids because we have a program in Plainfield where parents are starting to walk in the evening with their kids to give them some form of exercise. Some of the kids that really can't run, but they can walk.
Okay, all right. So Forest Park Aquatic Gardens gazebo.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I had one last question on the Duggan Park. Bob?
Yeah, Lamar?
Pat, so the basketball court, this is one basketball court for 6,600 square feet. Do you have the details on that? Because a standard NBA court is about 4,700 square feet. So that's one large basketball court.
It might be a typo.
Okay.
We can get back to you on that one.
Okay. Thank you.
And Bob, I had one last question. We talked, when Pat mentioned acquiring the park, I mean, you're acquiring it from the city. Is that a correct statement?
Right, it'll be a land transfer subject to the park commission, school committee, and then city council approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the gazebo.
Yes, so this is kind of to be honest, a little pet project that I'd like to see done as well as the Forest Park. And I don't know if the Forest Park Council was able to join us. Oh, Bill Molloy's there, so we appreciate Bill's support on this as well. But this was rebuilt. I think, Juanita, you were on conservation when this originally went up, I think in early 2000, when the aquatic garden restoration took place, maybe even the mid-90s.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in 2011, we had severe snowstorms. In February of 2011, the snow was so deep that it collapsed the roof of the structure. And we would like to replace this, and we have found a company that really replicates, we feel, the history of the gazebos from the early 1900s. And to be honest, the gazebo that collapsed, after I've seen our new replacement, I think the replacement would be more fitting.
Can anybody else not hear, or is it just me?
No, I
I
can't
went out
hear.
for a minute.
We lost him.
I'm actually watching it on channel 17.
Are they talking?
Well, now it just moved. Now it just.
Okay, so we lost,
Well, I can see Ralph now.
no?
Hang
I
on,
can
we're
talk
trying to
on-
we're trying to figure this out. I'm going to see if they're muted.
Oh, there they are. Can you hear us?
Okay,
Yes.
we're back.
Yes.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
How about now?
There you are. Now we can see you.
All right.
Juanita, Everparty's trying to get in on this. That's why we got this.
I think that's what it was.
So,
I think it was Rita Capola who picked this, and maybe she's just getting back. She wants the original.
all right. So if you go to page 23 of the document, it kind of shows you the trusses and so forth of the infrastructure of the proposed gazebo. And we're kind of excited in that it really does replicate the type of structures that were built throughout the park. And then again on page 18, there's a nice shot, interior shot. And that looks like a lot of the workmanship in the Barney Carriage House. So we're just excited, and we appreciate the Forest Park Civic Association's support and wanted this to happen as well.
Okay.
Okay, Bob, David had a question on the bike park. He had to hop off and he came back on, so we could go back to that.
We haven't done the bike park yet. Oh, I skipped over it. I'm sorry. So we will do the bike park. I picked up my application rather than look at my agenda.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sorry. So, and so we're going to be doing questions on the gazebo. So starting with Lamar.
No questions. Thank you.
Gloria.
No questions.
David.
I'm good, Bob. Thank you.
Juanita.
Yeah, Pat, would you be able to use the cement platform that's already there from the old one?
Yes, we can. All that infrastructure has been saved, and we've kind of been watching out over the years to make sure it can be reused. And we actually had one of the companies came out. They said perfect placement, and their platform, if they're chosen, would fit perfect.
Glad to see that's coming back.
Thank you.
Terry Mitchell.
No questions.
Terry Rodriguez.
No questions.
Ralph.
Yes, I have a question. So, Pat, I've seen the gazebo that's over at the Sullivan Park, the new one that's over there, and it's a fantastic gazebo. Is this going to be of a similar quality?
Get that. The company that we're using the spec for this one is the same company that did the Sullivan Park one.
Okay.
Okay. Willie.
No questions, thank you.
And I guess my only question is, why do all of the drawings say Forest Park skating gazebo? Is this going to be used for skating?
Well, that's what the company named it, so.
Oh, it's okay. Any other questions from committee members? Then we go on to the, so I'm going to use the chair to see whether Bill Malloy, who's been part of this, and since Pat didn't use all of his time, Bill, do you want to say anything briefly on yourself or by the Civic Association?
And unmute himself.
You have to unmute yourself.
Bill, you're muted.
Hit your space bar.
I did it. Okay. No, this is just a very positive project, and it's really been put together wonderfully by us, Pat and Laura. So we're just totally enthusiastic about seeing this restored. It's such a regional attraction, so it'd be an absolute good thing. So good job.
Thanks, Bill, for your help.
Thanks. So now,
You're welcome.
The skate park, I apologize for having screwed up the order.
Yeah, so the bike park, we were approached by Betsy Johnson probably a year and a half ago, and we've been working with her, and she's been working with the community members of this organization, and we came up with the idea that this could maybe work on parkland behind the Boys and Girls Club on Peru Street, or possibly we have about 60 acres of land on the backside of Greenleaf. And so we would like to get a schematic study done of this. It's, as you've seen in the news over the last year, it's been an issue that the youth have been asking for in our city to have a bike park. And we're ready to work with everyone to complete the study. And I don't know if Betsy Johnson was able to join. She wanted to say a few words.
Betsy's here.
Yeah. And we're actually,
Do you want
to actually complete the construction.
committee ask questions first, or just?
Well,
I leave that to the chair.
so Betsy, if you're part of the presentation, part of the 5 minutes, speak now. If you're simply here offering your support, then let's wait till we go through the questions.
Go through the questions. Go through the questions.
Okay, all right. And I give the same option to Alec. If he feels that he's part of the presentation, you're good. You'll come in afterwards. All right.
Thanks, Alan, for being here.
So we'll start off with Lamar.
Thank you. No questions right now.
Okay, and moving on to Gloria.
if I'm, excuse me, there's a what is it? Skateboard. A skateboard in the middle, and then around it is the bicycle?
That's to be determined, but that's right now how we feel that it could proceed.
Okay, so if that's how it proceeds, there's no way that a biker could get into the skateboard area while somebody's potentially skating around? Is there going to be enough of a separation?
Well, I guess I would be able to answer that once we start working with the designer and then again with the community on that.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. David?
Yes, Patrick, it appears the maintenance cost of these parks seem to increase significantly in the years after they're installed. My question is, as we're tight on revenue, how do we propose to maintain those parks going forward?
Well, that would be part of our study like we do with any park project. And we would work with our city finance department and, if necessary, private foundations to set up a fund to offset those maintenance costs.
Okay.
But we do that as part of our schematic design and process to look at that very issue.
And Patrick, would you be coming back to the CPC for future funds regarding this?
It's very possible, but there's also, the reason why we're excited about coming before you for this phase, there's a lot of private foundation monies that support the building of these parks. So right now, I would say, in this particular year, we need this to go forward, to go after those private funds. And when Betsy speaks, I think she could speak to that even better.
Okay, thank you.
Juanita?
David just addressed my questions.
Okay. Terry Mitchell?
No question.
All right. Terry Rodriguez?
No question.
Ralph?
Yeah, I have a question. So a lot of the sort of the impetus for this, at least in recent months, is to give, everybody knows that there's a bunch of kids who ride their bikes in traffic and, they like to kind of show off, and a lot of people don't like that. And there's several in here from some of the kids, I think, and they're listed as being Liberty Heights, South End, and North End. And I've seen the kids, and, they ride along Main Street, they ride into Chicopee. Is it really the right thing to do to investigate Greenleaf Park, which is on the complete other side of the city, and it's essentially like uphill too? It could. Are you going to at least take that into account rather than saying like, boy, we have land in Greenleaf, so let's build it there, versus let's build it where the kids who are currently wanting to use it live?
Well, I think what we're going to find is that a city of our size probably really needs two. So that's what my thought process is, and that's why I wanted to study, and it's kind of both ends of the city, if you will. A city of our size probably will need two at some point.
And I guess the follow-up question is, I know, again, sort of sold as a panacea for the kids who are riding in traffic, but, are those kids going to just still ride in traffic? It seems like they just like to have fun riding in traffic. Like, that's the thrill of it, rather than...
My personal opinion, if we had something like this, we could control it, have classes, have instructional programs for them. I think we would be able to attract the kids to want to use this, and it would be safer for everyone involved.
Okay, thank you.
Willie? Any questions, Willie?
No questions.
Okay, and I guess my only question is, will as part of the study, will the consultant be kind of trying to ascertain where the biggest demand is? I mean, I live downtown, so I certainly see skateboarders. I'm only out in 16 acres when I infrequently go out there, but I never see them. So I don't know whether the demand is really in the eastern edge of the city, or whether it's equally as in demand.
Yeah. So to answer that, I think I've got a call into Winnick, who has done past studies for us on those type of surveys, if you will. And so we're going to probably also get one of our colleges as a project involved to help us with a survey on that very question.
Okay. So Betsy, do you want to make some, let me just go back. Any other committee members have Any
I
other?
do.
Oh, Gloria?
I just want to say, I think I remember correctly that there was a woman in Springfield who was advocating, not you, Betsy,
No.
but a mother of one of those young adults who were riding in traffic. And I'm wondering if somehow that person could be pulled in where she might have more of a feel for where it should be and what they're looking for.
Yeah, Alan is actually, I think, working with that. Ruby and Betsy.
Yeah,
They're working
yeah,
with
I can
that.
say there's actually more than one of individuals who have been part of meetings that we've had and who definitely are part of or want to be part of this whole process. Yes.
Yeah, and if I may, we have 800 signatures on our petition to build this park. So there are numerous people who really want to be involved in the design of it and the research from site to site. So we're really happy that that's a key part of the process that we've applied for.
Okay, so unless either Betsy and Alex have anything else to ask, the committee members have asked their questions. I guess that concludes.
Well, Bob, can I just make a couple more comments, just that would address some of the things people said? Yes, I mean, I think, this really is this sort of needed first step to be able to, there's a lot of foundations out there. There's one that has helped fund over 700 what are called skate parks around the country, and just including, you know, Brockton, Fitchburg, Northampton, Turners Falls, and Salem here in Massachusetts, and plus some other communities in Massachusetts, and that they're not the only ones. One of the things we're doing is we're calling this a non-motorized all-wheel park. It's a mouthful because we're really looking, and why we really want this professional look at a sort of coming up with the design, because we really are looking to have a facility that will both meet the demands that we've had from the true skateboard community, as well as the BMX bikes who use many of the same kinds of ramps and dips and those kinds of things. And there are designs that do incorporate in a whole area of that, both skaters and that kind of bicycles. But then there's also the fat wheel bikes and the off-road dirt bikes, or what start to use what's called a pump park. These are all new things I've learned about. I think we're really looking to come up, and the designers that the Parks Department's already reached out to are really quite excited about coming up with something that'll really be something that can have really built upon what other communities have learned and really be something really unique and special here in Springfield. So
yeah, and if I might add a little bit to what Betsy said, for those who don't know, I run a community organization called Rad Springfield. We do weekly workshop during normal conditions, weekly workshops where we act as a safe space for youth to come in and work on bikes, rollerblades, skateboards. And we've really taken it upon ourselves to do some surveying and really understand what the youth are up against. And based on our surveys, more than 50% of the youth who are out there riding bikes have done so or regularly do so to avoid gang activity, drug activity, and violence in their homes and neighborhoods. So it's important to look beyond this just an infrastructure improvement for the city of Springfield. This is really a cultural revolution that's happening with the young people in our city, and to involve them in the design and the planning and the execution of this project could be incredibly redeeming for the second poorest community in the state. And to see this world-class facility be built in our city could be a huge regional draw.
Okay, well, thank you. So I guess that concludes our presentations. Karen, did any other citizens sign up to speak on public comments? Because I'm not seeing anyone, so I guess only the people that were here.
That's all I have. Just a note that Lamar Cook had to leave the meeting.
Okay.
You know.
Betsy and Alan, thank you for your help.
Okay.
Thank you.
So don't go away, folks, because we still have other things on our agenda, even though the meeting with the applicants is not done. We don't have a lot of them, but one is a motion to accept the minutes of March 3rd. That's the last time we actually met.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes. Oh,
Ralph,
I'm sorry, Ralph.
That's all right.
Ralph seconds, all in favor?
It has to be roll call. It's a remote, all votes have to be by roll call.
Okay, so Lamar is absent. Gloria?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Juanita?
Yes.
Terry Mitchell?
Yes.
Terry Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ralph Slade?
Yes.
Willie Thomas?
Yes.
And Bob McCarroll, yes. So the other thing I wanted to refer to the committee is we had, we had 5 electronic applications arrived after the 4 p.m. deadline. And I just want to make sure that, I did not want to make the decision myself as to whether we would accept them. In terms of one of them, Karen can talk about. The other 4, I got a call from someone who said they were on their way to the post office to get the postmarked, and I said, bring them to my house. So I had them physically on the 29th, rather than go to the post office and then wait for the mail to deliver them. But the actual electronic copies did not come in after 4. Karen, on your, until after 4.
Okay, so the first one came in at 4:07. And then thereafter, I think it was 4:30 and then 5:30 and then 7 o'clock, I think. But they all did come in on the 29th. I did speak with the person that was the 4:07, and I don't have the names in front of me right now, Bob. You might have it right there. But she had contacted me to say that they were in the process of it and they would be sending it in shortly. I don't know how much you want to penalize people that are a little late.
So
I'd like a motion to accept all of the applications that came in on the day of the application deadline, even though they were not there by 4 p.m.
Okay, second?
I second it.
Any discussion? No, then we'll go. Oh, Gloria?
I would just say I agree with what Ralph is saying, and perhaps next time around we make it clear that it has to be by deadline. This is a very unusual time for everybody, trying to you can't get together. So it makes sense.
Okay, so we'll take a vote. Gloria?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Juanita?
Yes.
Terry Mitchell?
Yes.
Terry Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Willie?
Yes.
And Bob, yes. So the other one is we had an email on the 29th saying that they were not submitting an application for this deadline, that they would probably have something ready in July, and wanted to know whether we would consider an off-cycle application. Let me just say this. In our instructions, what we say, the CPC may, under extraordinary circumstances, vote to accept applications that require consideration outside of normal funding cycles because of emergencies or market opportunities. I'm not sure whether this particular instance is either an emergency or a market opportunity, as opposed to their timetable didn't fit our timetable. Gloria?
I agree with you, Bob, on that. It doesn't appear to be an emergency, and it's nice to think that somebody wants to do tiny homes. But I think it can wait for the regular cycle.
I agree with Gloria.
Who was that?
Terry.
Oh, that was Terry. Okay. Ralph, you had your hand up?
Yes, I guess I would say that I would be willing to listen to the application if they submitted in July, but if it didn't have an emergency or a market opportunity, then I would say no to it. But I don't want to say right now, no, you can't put something in July. You know, maybe they don't, maybe it really is a market opportunity or an emergency.
Okay, Terry Rodriguez?
I really agree with Gloria, Terry, because if we start going off track off our timeline, then that's going to get confusing for people.
Yeah. Well, I think what we need probably is a motion to do something that we can then discuss because we know what the motion is. And so sort of there've been two suggestions. One, that the answer is no, apply regularly. And the other one is submit an application and we'll give you a decision once the actual application arrives. So which motion do we want to discuss first? So,
well,
Gloria?
I'll make a motion that we not accept the application mid-funding year.
Okay, second?
Terry Mitchell, I second it.
Okay, so discussion. Beyond Ralph?
Yes, I don't think that I would feel comfortable voting for that motion because I think that by saying that we are preemptively not going to accept an application, then that without even hearing what the application is, then that means that we cannot accept any applications in order to be fair. If somebody came in the middle of July and said, we have an issue where we have something is collapsing and we need money to fix it, we would have to say to them, sorry, no, because we already told somebody else not going to even listen to we're not even going to accept an application. We're not even going to listen to them. So we can't listen to anybody. So again, I think it would be prudent we're not going to tell them that they're going to get any money. We're not going to reserve any money for them. We're not going to put anything aside, but they can still put something in July if they want to. And then we could look at it and say, this is not an emergency. There is no market opportunity or we have no money available to give to you. So I guess my suggestion is wait until they actually put something in.
All right, Gloria? Gloria, what do you need? Sorry, I got my...
I think I agree with Ralph because we don't know if this is a chance that they can do it now or, I mean, an emergency, we don't know. We don't know that maybe something has come up for them right now.
Okay.
I think if it was an emergency, the person should have said it was an emergency and what the emergency was at the time the request was made. So I don't support accepting it.
Yeah. Thank you, Willie. Gloria?
Okay, let's see, maybe we could come to a compromise here. I understand what you're saying, Ralph. So could we, instead of, and I would change my motion or withdraw it if Terry withdraws her second, that we ask them for clarification, explain to us why they're doing it mid-funding year as opposed to in the normal process.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that sounds good, actually.
I agree with that.
Terry Mitchell, I agree.
Okay.
I would accept that.
All right, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Terry has to withdraw her second.
I withdraw my second.
Okay. And so someone now want to rephrase a motion that we can discuss and vote on?
Ralph, do you mind doing that?
Make a motion that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Gloria. Did you want to
No,
make the
please
motion?
go ahead.
She's deferring.
Okay. I make a motion that we request clarification from the party as to the reason for them applying in an off cycle.
I second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, we'll take a vote on the motion, which is to ask for clarification. as to why they want to apply off-cycle. So Gloria,
Yes.
David,
No.
Juanita,
Yes.
Terry Mitchell,
Yes.
Terry Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Willie,
Yes.
Bob will be yes. So the motion has passed. I guess I would leave it to Karen to communicate with them to say that the committee did not make a decision one way or the other on their request, but asked for clarification as to why they want an off-cycle consideration.
Okay. Will do.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda, we're not going to take place. It was a budget revision, and I think everyone got it. So the bottom line is, you know, we first thought, and we had an approved budget for $1.4 million and some change, but what's coming in is higher, both because tax surcharge is higher and because the state is higher. But just today, I got a response from Stuart at the coalition, who I had emailed about what do we do, and he said, no, you can't amend your budget now that the city council has approved it and the tax rate has been set, but you can set aside more money for the 3 areas, because the concern always is 10% has to be set aside for those 3 specific categories. So I'm going to be talking to him, to our financial people, to see exactly how we do that. So there is no action on that. And the last thing is just that we will be having a special meeting on May 19 to meet with the other applicants. And I guess the question I have for Eddie is, the meeting is on the 19th. There's possible that the governor's shutdown may be lifted on the 18th. Do we still have the ability to do a Zoom meeting on the 19th? Or once that's lifted, we have to go back to in-person meetings, and we should have an in-person site selected at which to meet?
So the remote authority that's in the governor's executive order expires when the emergency has been ended. I don't think it'll be ended. I do expect it will continue.
Okay.
I think you should plan on having a remote meeting. I think this went pretty well. I think that, you know, thank you everybody. Karen, I know you worked hard on this.
Thank you.
Kathy said you're very helpful in helping putting all the contracts together.
That's I'm very silent most of the time here, but yes.
But no, well, your work is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I have a question for you, actually, not specifically about the Zoom meetings. So this did go pretty well.
It did.
However,
better ones.
My question is, the next group of people, will they be at an advantage or disadvantage if they are face-to-face meetings? Whereas the people who came this first time, this might have been a little awkward for them. They're not face-to-face. Is that fair? Is that,
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have to answer that, because keep in mind the governor has a task force working on a plan. The report is due back on the 18th.
Yeah, we're not.
If we get the report on the 18th, we're not going to be able to just, you know, turn the ship around by the 19th.
No,
So, I actually expected the governor, from what I hear today, was supposed to say, for beginning this weekend, we're going to allow flower shops to open, Mother's Day, and I think they also were going to allow golf courses to open. And again, you need some lead time so people can buy flowers before Sunday, or so that we can make arrangements to get the golf courses open on Sunday. So the point is, don't expect having any sort of meeting other than what we're doing right here. My one concern is we did not have anybody really call in that was sort of, you know, I want to talk against something, or,
Correct.
you know, everything went very smoothly. I'm concerned what's going to happen if we get sort of some naysayers or people that want to try to disrupt the meeting. But let's be honest.
Well, I think a lot of this is attributed to Steve and his team over at Focus Springfield, and they need a raise. What they need is a raise for this.
They're not city employees. All right. But
it would be great if we could have people just call in.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. We can't.
Yeah. Well, but
Okay.
let me just say this, for this meeting and for the next one, the protocol is just like a city council speak out, you have to register if you want to call in and be part of the public comment part of it. You have to email Karen by a particular time. Now, obviously, we didn't have anyone do that now, but if they do, she will sign them up, and she will not be able to be unmuted. They will only be unmuted by Karen when we get to the public comment time. And if they go on too long, they will be then muted. So I think that.
Yeah, that's, and Brendan and Steve, you know, if I'm really more concerned, if let's say we get, I'm going to call the person a naysayer just for lack of a better label, where all of a sudden to register their negativity, they start sharing screens, which are probably not appropriate. Whether you know, I've been involved in a situation where we've had racist, anti-Semitic, pornographic screens come up in a Zoom meeting, and so we need to be very careful that we limit who's there, but still provide enough transparency so that the process Bob described is what we've come up with to try to find a balance, yet being able to control against the bombing phenomena. And so Brendan and Steve, if you can just add to that.
Hi, I'll jump in for a moment. Great meeting tonight, guys. You did a good job. We do have some protocols in place. We've had some successful public participation already in city council and school committee, and the plan that Ed laid out is about as bulletproof as it can get. We also do have extra protections in place that are sort of behind the scenes that you don't know about just by joining in. So anyone participating in the meeting cannot screen share. Only people that I designate are able to share their screen. So right now, none of you are able to do it because I don't want you to be able to. That can also be changed with a click of a button. Additionally, if someone gets in and starts spewing off something they shouldn't, it is one really easy click for me or Steve or Karen, who we also have listed as a co-host, to click on someone's name and remove them. Once they're removed, they cannot get back into the meeting, regardless of what they do. So we really have a lot of protections in place to keep the meeting safe, secure, and rated G. And we thank all of you for your help in this weird transition, making things work.
Very good. Ralph, you had a question or comment?
I just wanted to say that I've been sort of following this issue with some of the people on the Massachusetts Historic Preservation list, and there are several other communities that are allowing public participation without registration, and they have not reported any issues. I believe the city of Boston, their landmark commission, is even allowing people to call into their Zoom meetings without pre-registering 48 hours at a time.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster. And I'm not certain if you're advocating that or what, but
I am.
getting having the success that we had tonight is probably something that we should celebrate, and then we should take some time to think about how to make any changes. But this is about as an aggressive and open as a format that I feel comfortable with, and I think Ed, and I certainly know Brendan, who has to deal with a lot of the back of the scenes stuff, to open it to the wild, wild west could get a whole lot of different kind of publicity, I think.
It'd be fun though, Steve, too.
For who?
In all fairness, if none of our meetings, we've had 2 rounds. We've never had anybody have any problems when we were face to face. So
How many of those were Zoom meetings?
No, I know, but I mean, we never had the problem before. Yeah.
No, because you've never been online.
All right, so May 19th, 6 o'clock, the rest of the application. So have supper early because it's going to be another 2.5-hour meeting.
Do you want all 15, the remaining 15 applications or applicants?
That would be my inclination to get it over with.
May I ask a question? What kind of supporting materials, did they have many slides to add out of that group of 15? Tonight we had 4 out of 10. How about that group?
Well, I have to say that the work we had tonight was heavily done by the institutional people, and the ones that are coming next time are mostly the neighborhood-based group. So I have a sense that they may not have a lot, it's certainly not any more than you saw this time. But who knows?
Did that work out okay, Stephen? With the
Yeah, this worked out as much better than I thought it was. So, you know, my question would be, is there a time that we might be able to review in the next couple of days when the other material comes in, and we can gauge whether we think we can put 50% more onto the plate for the evening?
And the other thing that I have to say, and this is just my opinion, maybe we could get feedback from other committee members, I didn't think any of the things that got put up were any more helpful than being told, look at page 23 of your application.
Okay, Bob, just a reminder, we are still live.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I'm just saying that for me, having those visual things show up, and I didn't see my map, by the way, but that's all right. Having those things didn't make the presentation better in my mind. It was equally as good because the others, there it is. There it is. Okay.
You're supposed to ask. You're supposed to ask for it. We'll put it up anytime.
That's all right. I decided it was just as easy to name the neighborhoods where they were located. So so Ralph, you have a comment.
So I guess I would like to float the idea of splitting those proposals up into 2 additional meetings. And the reason is that as I don't know who said it, 50% more, if you look at right now, it took us 2.5 hours. So that means that the next meeting will be a 3-hour and 45-minute meeting. And I think that's going to be awfully excessive.
Yeah, okay, all right. So Karen, have you already emailed some of those people to tell them that they're coming on the 19th? Because we may have to email them that they're not.
No, because we just confirmed the date earlier today, so.
Okay.
Email them tomorrow.
So I'm gonna, is everyone sort of, this is a consensus, it's not a vote. Everyone who wants to split them up, raise their hand. Everyone who wants to split them up.
My hand is raised.
I see yours. I see Terry Rodriguez. I see Juanita. I see Terry Mitchell. David's is up. Okay, so there it is. And I can't see Willie, but Willie, what do you think?
Hand raised.
Okay, all right. So we will do that.
Yeah, a 4-hour meeting would be 4.5 hours would be way too much.
So the only thing, and we do not have to decide now, but if we have half of them coming on the 19th, and we have half of them then coming on our regularly scheduled first Tuesday of June, at some point, I'm going to be saying, shall we have a special June meeting to start the deliberations? because we'd like to get things going before, well, if assuming anyone has vacation season this year, we may not be going anywhere. So just keep in mind that it may be good then to have an extra meeting in June. All right. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you for raising those concerns. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn, but first of all, I'd like to thank, Focus Springfield.
I second it.
Yeah, bravo. You did a great job. And Karen.
Brendan.
This was fine. This was a really good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Stephen.
Very good.
Actually, Bob, because we are still live, if anyone has comments that they want to make on any of the projects that were here tonight, you can either email springfieldcityhall.com, or send a letter to Springfield Preservation Committee. What Court Street? 30?
No, Community Preservation Committee, City Hall, 36 Court Street, room 412.
Correct.
01103.